Oh, yeah.
I was also wrong this past weekend on Saturday, on Culture State Saturday, saying, man, I have a good feeling about this game for the Carolina Panthers and the Bengals. I think the Panthers could go out there and they could win because they're going to win it in the trenches. Their defensive line is going to be better than the Bengals' bad offensive line. Boy, was I wrong. And boy, was I wrong about NC State and Wake Forest.
Oh,
Man,
I was
I don't think
totally
I've
wrong
ever
on
been
that.
more wrong than I was this past weekend.
I was way off on State Wake Forest. Way off.
I think everybody was, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting a Wake Forest win. Okay, which makes sense because MJ Morris is getting his first career start for NC State at quarterback, a true freshman. Their offense has not looked good over the last few weeks, especially against Virginia Tech before that. With the exception of like the last half of the fourth quarter. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions. And can NC State's defense hold up for a long time against Wake Forest offense if the offense is struggling and doesn't give them any sort of help? Oh, was it different? It's like, oh, by the way, NC State's like, oh, yeah, you know what? We should actually run like a modern offense. We can actually, we could throw the ball down the field. That's an option. We can make those decisions as a coaching staff to throw the ball down the field. Why didn't you do it with Devin Leary?
We also didn't anticipate Wake Forest coming off of an 8 turnover game to continue to turn the ball over, because just knowing Dave Clawson and how he is, from my time covering him over when I was in Winston-Salem, like you usually don't get those back-to-back games that are like that with them, especially with an established quarterback like Sam Hartman, who is going to go down as one of the best in the ACC. I mean, he has so many touchdowns. He's close to I think he can catch Phillip Rivers for the most touchdown passes.
He might. Sounds about right.
He's really close. It's one of those stats that's there. I believe it's touchdown passes over his course in the ACC. So, I mean, Sam Hartman will be one of the GOATs in the ACC, and you just don't assume that he's going to come and continue to turn the ball over like that.
Yeah.
You would think that a game like NC State would be the bounce-back game for Wake Forest. And, man, when they don't score a 30, they're not winning.
Yeah.
And this was another game that showed that.
I was at the game, and I was actually down on field level, which, by the way, go to @CultureStatePod on Twitter and Instagram, putting there the nice little fun highlight video. To our friend Cesar Comanche, who was in studio with us just recently, a little music from him. Make sure you're here on YouTube that you subscribe to that and check that out. Elbow drop that subscribe button here on 99.9 The Fans YouTube page. Now, I was down on the field level, and just watching the game, Sam Hartman was uncomfortable the whole night. There was constant pressure. They blitzed like crazy. Like Gibson and that defensive coaching staff for NC State was just all up in Sam Hartman's grill the whole night. He was constantly, even when he wasn't getting hit or touched, his feet were never settled the whole game. Now, there's definitely some big chunk plays that they picked up because it's Wake Forest offense. They are good. But he was just under duress the entire night. Big shout out to NC State's defense because they balled out that game.
Sure did.
Absolutely balled out that game. They also showed that there have been moments this season where they've been not quite up to that level, moments of inconsistency. It's college football. You're going to have that. But, man, they looked like one of the best defenses out there on Saturday night against Wake Forest. And they were like 3 turnovers against Hartman, I think 5 sacks as well. Drake Thomas was all over the place. Peyton Wilson's a monster. Isaiah Moore, those 3 guys at linebacker, you can argue the best linebacking trio in the country.
Yeah. They definitely came to play, and obviously they saw something on tape with if we do this to Sam Hartman, then check the tape. If they saw something on tape where, hey, if we do this to Sam Hartman to show him this type of a look, he's going to throw the ball right to us, and that's kind of what happened. And it was very foreign to see.
Being on the field during that game, in-state rivalry, that place was just fully amped. It was a night game at Carter Finley Stadium. That place was ramped up to an 11. That place was electric. And it was the back and forth of that game because remember early on, they were trading off touchdowns. Now, NC State ended up pulling away. Wake Forest got the late touchdown to kind of make it close. But it was a pretty back and forth game for much of it. And the Carter Finley was it was packed. You know, everyone talks about, at halftime, everyone leaves and it doesn't really come back. 8 minutes left in the third quarter, everyone was back in their seats because it meant that much. And I think it was also a bit of we talk about the state title. There's a lot of pride on the line for state of North Carolina in terms of who's the best team in the state of North Carolina.
Yep.
And right now it's coming down to 2 schools who meet the day after Thanksgiving. It's going to probably come down to State, and it's going to come down to UNC. Now, UNC still has to play Wake Forest, okay? Now, Wake Forest also still has to play Duke coming up, but looking at transitive property and all that kind of stuff, it's really going to come down to State and UNC, which I think is going to be probably the most NC State thing ever to happen is they're going to beat North Carolina the last regular season game, but watch North Carolina still go to the ACC championship game representing the Coastal and beat Clemson and go to the Orange Bowl.
Or
that would be the very NC State thing to happen.
Or look at this. I mean, what if you have Wake Forest lose to NC State? What if NC State loses to Carolina, and Carolina loses to Wake Forest? Then you basically have a tie. And that's something that actually really could happen where you have these 3 teams in the state of North Carolina that are almost there. They are literally scratching the surface, but they can't get out of their own way for whatever reason individually. They have their individual issues. For Wake Forest, it looks like it's turnovers and defense right now. For NC State, they're fixing their problem. It's offense. They're looking a little bit better. For Carolina, it's definitely their defense, and they allow teams to come back in games. They never really put teams away. And so because of that, what if Sam Hartman, and this could be old by the time people are watching this, but, if Sam Hartman has a bad game, Carolina can, definitely allow Wake Forest to get back into that game really fast. So there's a chance that this ends up kind of in a 3-way tie.
It could. There's definitely the potential for that. I'm not going to deny that at all. But the way things are shaping up, where things stand at this moment, which we all know it changes just like that.
Yep.
It's going to look like it's going to come down to State and UNC. And again, I think it's going to be hysterical if State beats UNC, but UNC ends up beating Clemson and still goes to a New Year's Six Bowl. NC State would go 10-2, having beat North Carolina, and North Carolina goes to a New Year's Six Bowl. That would be very NC State.
Dennis Cox and Chris Lee about to dig in the crates, so turn it up, cause it's time for the culture state. Yeah, we do it for the culture, home of the greats, in the Carolina hood from the culture state. Chris Lee and Dennis Cox about to dig in the crates, so turn it up, cause it's time for the culture state. Yeah.